Elden Ring eludes my ability to create a concrete opinion on a thing. Generally, I don't like the game. I think it taxes the player more than it rewards, and the dichotomy between ER's theoretical fun in build experimentation and exploration, and playing the actual game, makes for a frustrating playthrough. All the same, I found myself replaying the base game in an attempt to make another video on it. After producing about 2.5 hours worth of commentary, I decided to scrap the project and start again. Something about the angle of the video seemed off to me. It was sometime around having to delete a joke about us getting a Fortnite Elden Ring, when From Software revealed that that was a real thing, that I lost patience when finishing it, I think. It isn't that I can't talk about the game at length, it's more that the game doesn't really deserve or need that kind of attention, and after playing through the game again, I realized that despite some artistic choices I made in my previous ER video being something I dislike, my review overall pretty much holds up these days, but for one or two points that could have used some more work. In fact, I'm actually pretty impressed with myself for being able to see the forest for most of the trees, even after just a year into the game's lifespan, even if I do say so myself. Talking about the game at that sort of length somehow manages to muddy the water in a way that's counterintuitive to making my point, because the closer you look at Elden Ring, the less you're able to see the bigger picture about its gameplay loop, and therefore the time tax that's baked into its genes. Anyway, this video is a condensed version of that 2.5 hour video that I scrapped. It's a prelude to what will eventually be my review of Shadow of the Erdtree, which will be out soon. I don't have a whole lot to say on that either. Instead of talking about the game in a micro sense, we'll be going over the macro philosophy of Elden Ring and how it treats the player from the early and mid-game to the late game. We've been here before, so I don't want to waste your time with a needlessly long preamble. Let's get stuck in so that I never have to talk about this game ever again. Elden Ring is a tale of 3 development cycles. The first cycle is concerned with the bottom trilogy, as I like to call it: Limgrave, Caelid, and Liurnia. These 3 portions of the map are designed in similar fashion to all the portions that come after, but for the fact that the late game design of Elden Ring is hidden from the player when moving through them. They are also, admittedly, and to varying degrees, mostly just better than the rest of the game. More thought was put into all of the content there, and all of that content will be first introductions, and so, naturally, content that isn't repeated yet. Here, the player will be generally motivated enough to clear out each encampment, catacomb, boss fight, Evergale, colloquially known as an Everjail, and every other form of content in an attempt to find all the rewards and enemies in each. Limgrave is but a lush greenery with evenly spread out content. Liurnia is an area that allows for fast boss rushing and opens the mind up to alternate mage builds, and Caelid provides a break in the monotony with a starkly new aesthetic and extremely punitive enemies. The second cycle is concerned with the mid-game duo, Mount Gelmir and Leyendell / the Altus Plateau. I consider the two linked. These two areas start putting pressure on the player to ignore many of the enemies they come across. Not only do these enemies start getting quite annoying scaling HP and damage, but they are positioned in ways that generally ask the player to deal with ambushes and collective mobs, more often than usual, resulting in encouraged cheese or outright ignoring of the open world. The boss fights featured here begin to show just how reused enemies are. Caves, catacombs, and Evergales will house the same bunch of mini-bosses that were littered throughout the bottom trilogy. Giants, stone Meow Meows, Black Knife Assassins, and even Godric the Grafted are all reused here. The third cycle is everything late game, the boss rush. Here, the player will be expected to skip all the enemies in the open world, who have banana nut busted scaling and are all bunched together with ranged attacks and 1/2 HP dealing abilities. Some of the enemies you've come to know as bosses are now just normal enemies. It's wildly annoying to see these guys just chilling in your way, like it isn't a big deal that almost all of the content you've played up to this point was just late game content scaled down. The bosses are the main course at this particular juncture in the game, and so the player will find themselves running through in speedrun fashion. First, the captain in the snowy mountaintops, then the fire giant to burn the Erdtree, then the downgraded Ornstein and Smo fight, and then usually after that, Malekith for Destined Death. After Mali, players with a chip on their shoulders will go after Mohg in his woeful palace, and then go to fight the Blade of Miquella, Melania. After the Blade, which is both a great fight and a terrible one, players will go back to Leyendell to rush the final 4 bosses: Sir Gideon, Godfrey, Radagon, and finally, the Elden Beast. This time, From Software doesn't even give you the option to choose between rushing them and taking it slow. They are latched onto one another, one after the other, without pause. Fun. I believe one's opinion on Elden Ring will stem from whichever cycle they finish playing on. Players whose last memory of the game comes from the third cycle will strongly shift their opinion, positive or negative, more towards a punitive mindset. they will be harsher on the game. Those who finish during their second cycle may be inclined to put their vote in either ponderous direction, and those who finish, probably on New Game Plus, in this first cycle, the bottom trilogy, will remember the strong promise the bottom trilogy has and will look back on the entirety of the game fondly. Ultimately, I feel this is why I've had a hard time coming to a conclusion about how I rate this game. Its good early game obfuscates the poor quality of its late game, and it takes so long to traverse between those sections of the game, if you're actually playing through all of the content, that I could have gone from hating to even liking this game depending on where exactly I last played it, and whether or not I had the other parts of the game fresh in my mind while doing so. In my last review of Elden Ring, I skipped a few aspects of the game that I think need more attention, and I made some mistakes that I'd like to correct. The gate front. I spent too much time on this part of the game. Yes, the ambushes and the enemy spam are annoying and constant in Elden Ring, but the game also gives you more tools than ever before to manage crowds like this, so whatever, I took it too seriously. The Crystallians. I said that making poise-breaking or strike weapons the only real way to beat these guys was a sign of bad role-playing design. This was absolutely incorrect, as most of you seem to understand from the get-go. Giving players benefits and weaknesses is what role-playing is all about. I don't know what I was thinking with this one. I think I got tunnel-visioned on the idea and just kept writing without questioning whether or not what I was writing had a correct angle. The Crystallians are fine, and the combative role-playing in Elden Ring is strong. Melania. I didn't even play against this boss in my last playthrough, which makes sense since she's placed in the endgame, where I least enjoyed Elden Ring. Still, I should have, as she reveals a huge part of From Software's contemporary mindset for player retention and scaling up playtime in a way that I'd call artificial. A boss fight that shows glimpses of being one of the best duelist fights in From Software history. I'd say better than Artorias, even for his time. But a boss that is also marred by a design philosophy that punishes melee build interaction more than it rewards risk-taking, which ultimately gives it one of the worst first phases in one of the most cynical fights in FromSoft history, unfortunately, and at least half of that fact is all thanks to Waterfowl Dance. Before I get into this, you should know that I wrote an article on my website about this boss. If you like reading, it'll offer you a more in-depth analysis of what I think. Link in the description, but here's the gist of it. Waterfowl Dance single-handedly turns the first phase of Melania's boss fight into a fight that is meta-gaming itself. That is to say, a fight that knows people will be Googling answers on how to counter it, and therefore takes the opportunity to introduce what had to be the most cynical anti-fun mechanic in the history of From Software in the form of this move. It features hyper-tracking of the player's positioning, meaning there is no direction that you can run to juke it. You must either run away from it, pray that you can iframe the attack to likely only take partial damage from its first phase, or get hit by it, likely resulting in your death. Getting hit by Melania, at any point, heals her, even if you block all of that damage, which means that you cannot risk getting chunked by this move. You'll waste your own healies, and you'll be giving her HP, which, if healing her up to a certain point, seems to reset her trigger for when she's allowed to perform Waterfowl Dance, resulting in another instance of this move that you otherwise wouldn't have had to deal with. I was playing the game blind for that original 2.5-hour video that I scrapped. All of that footage, as a rule, had to be obtained without the help of the internet. Melania made me break that rule. How to juke Waterfowl Dance, my browser asked Google, and there were two answers. One was to try and game the tracking, which had to be frame perfect and didn't seem consistent, and players much better than I suggested just not doing that. The other was to run. You run from the first set of strikes, then you jump through the second, then you jump under the third. You do that, you do exactly that, and then you thank From Software for being good game maker. The thing is, they are really good at what they do, From Software. I still like this fight. It is a dark time indeed, because I actually look forward to Melania if I'm playing this game. But if she was a boss in Dark Souls 3, you and I both know she'd be known as absolute dog water. But in Elden Ring? Well, she's peachy keen. I mean, at least she's not a repeated boss, right? Altogether, she's fine. And I think without Waterfowl, she's great, but we haven't touched on that second phase yet, and admittedly this isn't just a Melania problem, but a problem of scale, artistry, and either incompetence or lazy malice on From Software's part. Her second phase obfuscates what she's doing. No, really, it's that simple. When she expands with Raw, you cannot see what the fuck is happening in front of you. Like, what is this? What's happening right here? Am I supposed to be able to play the game right now, or am I just supposed to guess and smash that roll button? Well, yes, to that last question. That's how you play against every boss in Elden Ring until you get good. But more to my point here, From Software have a number of what I would call spectacle fights in Elden Ring. Fights that rely, to either a small or large degree, on the player just not being able to see what's happening to facilitate difficulty. The worms you find throughout the game, where the fuck, what the hell, right? You know? The Elden Beast. Where? What are you doing? What's that? Put that sword down. The dragons are usually a little more manageable, but not this one. Where'd he go? What's he doing? Who knows? That's why it's fun, right? You just can't see what Melania is doing. And she still has access to her waterfowl dance move during the second phase as well, of course. So, yeah. From Software's art team, balance team, and director, all fighting over who can take the blame for making this game as frustrating as it is, I guess. But I killed her. I got good, alright, so no bitching in the comments. And I did it on multiple playthroughs, so really, we've done it. We've played the game. Moog was fun, Ronnie's questline was the best in the game, and the frenzy ending was neat. I got to see Melana's face up close, at least, so it's not exactly a hard vote to make, no pun intended. I'd say the crafting system helps to mask the sheer boredom associated with the open world. Because you're fighting enemies that are more or less just recycled Dark Souls 3 enemies, you need a little extra sauce to keep the intrigue alive. And I dare say that when I pick up lumps of flesh or hefty beast bones or rune arcs off of rats, it really does trigger my dopamine receptors and helps me to continue playing the game, despite feeling that I'm just engaging with the more boring aspects of the previous Dark Souls games. Which I am. Dark Souls 1 had an immersive world and tight design. That is missing from Elden Ring. For all the faults of Dark Souls 2, that game had an insane amount of experimentation in design and took real risks with its makeup. This is missing from Elden Ring. Dark Souls 3 features very similar gameplay as Elden Ring, but created a linear design of its world that respected its players' time. This is missing from Elden Ring, which tries to combine everything its predecessors did, but fails in matching their quality, giving it a jack-of-all-trades characteristic that demands 400% more time to complete than any of what came before. But the crafting, and therefore loot hoarding, helps me to ease the open-world boredom resulting from that. I would get a rune arc, and then be reminded about Melania's Great Rune, which heals HP on hit after taking damage, much akin to Bloodborne's inherent rally system. It worsens the effects of Estus Flax, Crimson Tears. It worsens Crimson Tears, so then I'm like, okay, it would make a great addition to a build that makes use of all healing spells. A faith-based build. Combine the inherent heals of my spells with a Great Rune, and I'll never have to spend time consuming Crimson Tears. Neat. You see, for me, imagining the possibilities of a character build like that, and many others, all of the ones I can think of anyway, is just so much fun. I'm sure you can relate to that. That aspect of a game, by itself, is a powerful tool for pulling in a player like me, and Elden Ring offers up a ton of possibilities. Let's not kid ourselves here. You've got the Ashes of War, which may or may not synergize with these collections of talismans, or you've got these spells, which may or may not synergize with these stabs, and let's try a full dex build, or that same build, but with a quality approach, and this Great Rune, this armor, that weapon, these crafting items, etc., etc. There are a lot of combinations that you can try to use to break the game. But at the end of the day, no matter how much planning you do, you will, inevitably, unfortunately, be forced to play the game. It doesn't matter what your build is, the vast majority of the bosses in the bottom trilogy will all be nerfed late game enemies. The mid game duo will be just as dry on your 10th playthrough as your first, and the late game boss rush, well, I imagine some of us are going to enjoy this part of the game more than others, but I can't imagine very many of us will enjoy engaging with the open world here. I found it to be the weakest part of Elden Ring, not associated with legacy dungeons or caves. And in that bottom trilogy, man, you'll trick yourself into thinking that the rest of the game is made with as much care as what you're currently playing. Elden Ring is very, very good at doing that, but you will get to the Altus Plateau eventually. And the item spam, the constant looting, the enemy spam, the boss repetition, it turns into McDonald's Dark Souls real fucking quick. It really does. I'm sorry to say that, but it's true. If the entirety of this game was at the standard of the bottom trilogy, or even just Liurnia by itself, whatever, I might even put it above Dark Souls 3. I'd really consider it. But definitely above Dark Souls 2, even though I have a great deal of respect for Dark Souls 2 and its exemplary showcase of hardcore experimentation. As it stands, all things considered, everything together, Elden Ring is the worst Souls-like From Software have ever produced. And I hit the nail on the head a couple years ago when I said that all this game has accomplished is to make me question what sort of standard I should expect from this studio moving forward. This has been a prelude, and I'll see you all when I get this Erd Tree review out. Good luck, have fun.